My name is Amanda Branch, a senior associate in our Dentons Ottawa office, and I am joined by my colleague, Marc Elshof, a partner and co-head of the European Data Privacy and Security in Dentons Amsterdam office. Welcome to Dentons Plus, a series where we provide answers to the most popular questions asked during our webinars. We recently hosted a webinar on the new EU Standard Contractual Clauses, where we provided practical tips for Canadian businesses to use and operationalize the new SCCs. So we're back to answer your most pressing questions. We want to ensure that you are equipped with the information you need to prepare and protect your organization. I would like to start off by providing you with a brief reminder of PIPEDA adequacy. The European Commission has the power to determine whether a country outside the EU offers an adequate level of data protection. Canada has had partial adequacy status as it is considered as providing an adequate level of protection for personal data transferred from the EU to organizations who are subject to PIPEDA without having to implement other mechanisms to protect privacy. Alberta, British Columbia, and Quebec have their own private sector privacy laws that have been deemed substantially similar to PIPEDA. However, these pieces of legislation have not been deemed as adequate. Only PIPEDA has adequacy. While transfers from the EU to a Canadian entity that come under PIPEDA do not require standard contractual clauses, onward transfers by that entity to a recipient in another country that does not have EU adequacy do require SCCs. Now, Marc, I have a couple of questions for you. What is the difference between joint controllers and a controller-to-controller relationship?
Thanks, Amanda, and hello to everyone. It's a good question. If two controllers exchange personal data, this will often be a regular controller-to-controller relationship. Joint controllership exists if two controllers jointly determine the means and the purposes of the data processing. In other words, two companies or two or more companies decide together why and how they will process personal data. And this can be through a common decision. Let me give you an example. Companies A and B have launched a co-branded product C and want to organize an event to promote this product. So they decide to share customer data, share a list of invitees to the event. They agree on how the invites will be sent, how to collect feedback, and how to do the follow-up marketing activities. So A and B are joint controllers for the processing of the personal data related to the event, as they together decide why and how the data is processed in this context. But you can also be a joint controller through converging decisions. And these cases are often less clear and more abstract. Decisions can be considered converging on the why and how if they complement each other and are necessary for the processing to take place in such a manner that each of those decisions has a tangible impact on how and why the data is processed. It's pretty abstract. Let me give you an example. And this is based on some recent decisions by the European Court of Justice on joint controllership. An operator of a website participates in the determination of the purposes and means of the processing if it embeds, for example, a social media plugin on its website with a view to optimize the publicity of its goods by making them more visible on that social media network. Now, in this case, the processing is in the economic interests of both the operator of the website and the provider of the social media plugin. Because the processing of the personal data through the statistics of the visitor via the plugin is intended to enable the social media platform to improve its system of advertising via its network, but also to enable the operator of the website to obtain statistics to manage the promotion of its activities. Now, while each entity in this case pursues its own interests, both parties participate in the determination of the purposes and means, so the why and the how of the processing of the personal data in regards to the website visitors. And with its decisions, the European Court of Justice has cast a net pretty wide. And if two or more companies both influence one processing activity, there can certainly be joint controllership, and it can be sooner than companies might think. What's the consequence? Well, if there is joint controllership, the controllers have to enter into joint controller arrangements in which they clearly allocate their tasks. And this can, for example, be related to informing the individuals or who notifies a data breach. So it's really important that you carefully assess your position in this regard if you share data with other companies or if you jointly process data with other companies.
Thanks, Marc. That's very helpful. When conducting a data transfer impact assessment, and in the case where local laws allow for a local government to access that data, is it reasonable to take into account the type of personal information being transferred? So, for example, if the personal information is limited only to phone book type data, such as a phone number or name and address only, to conclude that while government access may not be preventable, the likelihood that the government would want access to that type of information is minimal. So would the risk in that case be that the transfer is low or acceptable, or for the purposes of a data transfer impact assessment, are we required to treat all personal information as being equally sensitive?
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. And that's a very valid question that we get asked quite often. If you look at the SCCs, they expressly provide that in addition to the laws and practices of the country of the importer, and the safeguards that have been implemented, the party should take account of the specific circumstances of the transfer, and that includes the length of the processing chain, the number of actors involved, the way the data is transferred, any intended onward transfers, the type of recipient, the purpose of the processing, but also, and that goes to your question, the categories and format of the transferred personal data, the sector in which the transfer takes place, and the storage location of the data that is transferred. The EDPB, the European Data Protection Board, also confirms this position in its transfer recommendations. But if you read between the lines, they seem to be focused more on the laws of the country of the destination than on the specifics of the transferred data. But to summarize, yes, in your data transfer impact assessment, you may and you should actually take into account the type of personal information being transferred.
Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you to Marc for accompanying me. Feel free to reach out to anyone on our team for more information.